is Holland Chambers Biology coming to you with an awesome lecture on adaptations. So let me go ahead and walk you guys through this. The first adaptation that animals need to have is number one, structural. So this is how you're able to survive in a changing environment. And so it could either be a physical, like your muscles, your bones. It could be mimicry. It could be a mutation. Maybe even camouflage traits, such as the zebra or, like the octopus, how it can actually blend in with its environment and you can't really see it. So that's an adaptation that they naturally have that allows for them to benefit with their specific environment. Here's a quick video for you guys on mimicry and adaptations with these animals.
12 coolest camouflage animals and insects. Number 12, the walking stick. It looks a lot like a creature featured in that Harry Potter spin-off film Fantastic Beasts, but it's known as a stick insect because of its elongated body with limbs which resemble sticks, twigs, or very, very thin tree branches. These stick bugs or walking sticks are found all over the world, are well-known herbivores, and some species even have wings. These bugs usually grow to be around 12 inches in length and are considered by many to be the world's largest insects.
So that's just an example, and of course there's many. Behavioral adaptation is our second one. So again, the way that animals can survive in their changing environment is through structural adaptation or behavioral adaptation. So that's number two, and this is out of three. Behavioral adaptation means even though I might not blend in with my environment, or maybe I don't quite match my environment, I have a specific behavior that allows for me to survive. So for example, bears, when it gets to the winter, they hibernate, so they don't have the ability to hunt for food during the winter. Iguanas have the ability to just go mentally crazy and jump into this, super cold, turbulent water to find algae, and they survived. Diet changes, even cannibalism, specifically among like chimpanzees. Teaching children how to hunt, like the killer whales do down in South Africa, are all different behavioral isolations. The third adaptation is functional. Functional is internal. So for example, when the weather starts to shift, koala bears will actually hug the trees because the trees themselves are cooler. Sea turtles will cry out salt if they have too much salt inside their system, and so this allows for equilibrium to happen. Maybe you have the ability to have a lot of eggs like sea turtles, so you can lay 100 eggs at one time versus say humans having one or two children at a time. Again, poison, maybe your blood has increased or decreased oxygen, increased, decreased heart rate. There's so many things that will allow for you to be functionally adaptive. And here's a quick video on koalas.
Hi guys, I'm Katie Wayne and this is Animalist News. Some people think that tree huggers are a bad thing, but the animal kingdom disagrees. According to a new study published in Biology Letters, hugging trees not only feels good, but can also be healthy. In the hot Australian weather, koalas are often seen clinging to trees. These branches are used for a lot more than just balance. Scientists say that hugging trees actually helps animals regulate their body temperature, so much so that many have evolved their bodies to be able to cling as close as possible. In the case of koalas, fur is thinner on their belly so that important organs in their chest can be cooled first. As they continue to hug, their body replaces warm blood with cold blood from parts touching trees so their entire body cools. But koalas aren't the only arborists out there. Leopards, bats, reptiles, and chimpanzees also tend to relax on branches. Researchers...
All right, so all these adaptations are going to help these animals lead to genetic diversity. Again, in the animal kingdom, you do not want to be exactly like everybody else. So in case the environment changes, which it does all the time, we go from, climate change to an ice age, to a desert, to a rainforest, to, everything's underwater. And so because everybody's slightly different, when this environment changes, it allows for some of us to survive. And that's the key. It increases the chance of survival, which leads to the success of a whole species. Now, what is the relationship between genetic variation and an organism's ability to adapt? Well, an organism with certain physical, behavioral, or functional, again, this could be, either one. It doesn't have to be all of them. If it's better suited for that changing environment, which allows for them to survive and then pass on those genetic allele frequencies, which means that this organism has high fitness. So again, you need to not just survive, but you need to be able to reproduce. So if you can pass on those genetic allele combinations, this would ultimately lead to the creation of a new species as a whole, given time. And so these slight mutations that you guys have learned through genetics, point mutation, frame shift mutation, chromosomal mutations, all of those are going to lead us to those genetic differences. A classic example that we talk about a lot in biology is killer whales. There are 11 plus 1 species of killer whales that are out there, and they say that one of these subspecies actually became 2 different species about 150,000 years ago because of these genetic differences. And so here's a quick example of all the different species of killer whales that we have. Now, adaptations are going to also lead us to what we refer to as microevolution. Micro in Latin means small, so these are small changes that will appear over a short period of time. They're super observable, and they're definitely called by mutations. Guys, this is the coronavirus. This is antibiotic-resistant bacteria. These are your superbugs. And so because they're so small, they reproduce so fast, we're able to see these gradual changes and mutations of new species within our lifetime. Normally, you can't see that. Some examples of microevolution is actually happening in the Amish community over in Pennsylvania, I believe, where a lot of the children are being born with 6 fingers, which is known as polydactyl. Now, this small genetic change is going to eventually lead to a new species. And so due to reproductive isolation, so if we isolate those killer whales to say, Antarctica only, and they're no longer breeding with the killer whales down in South Africa, because they're no longer exchanging genetic disposition, genetic diversity, their genetics become isolated, and over time they actually spike into 2 different species. This will take thousands of years to do. It doesn't happen overnight, but the Grand Canyon squirrels, this actually occurred about 10,000 years ago, where one squirrel got caught on the other side of the Grand Canyon and actually became a different species. Now, this microevolution is going to eventually lead to macroevolution. Macroevolution is an entirely new organism. Guys, we're not talking virus to virus or killer whale to killer whale. We're talking like a lizard into a bird. So completely different. This is going to happen over millions of years. It is not observable according to the human lifespan. And so we're going to base a lot of this off of fossil evidence, which is why it becomes extremely controversial, because my theory on fossils versus your ideas on fossils might actually be 2 different things. And, that's, where it gets a little controversial. Horses, on the other hand, are pretty self-explanatory. They actually have a very linear evolutionary standpoint. And you can actually map it straight through time, like one species evolving a little bit bigger, a little bit different, until eventually the modern horse that we see today. Now, if I were to ask you, which I will, to connect all of this together, so what is my entire lecture about? You would say something like this. You would say adaptations are physical, behavioral, or functional. Again, outside, mental, or internal. And these are attributes that will allow for an organism to survive. So again, you are best suited for that environment, best suited for those changing environments. Most importantly, however, is that these beneficial adaptations must be passed down through the generation. So you have to be able to reproduce in order to pass on those microevolutionary traits. causing a genetic ripple effect in the creation of a new species. And again, this is not necessarily going to happen. This could happen. If it does slowly change over millions of years, then we're talking about macroevolution, which again must include reproductive isolation. Guys, you're not going to get a new species if they're all mating together, okay? They've got to isolate on an island, isolate in an area where they're no longer mixing with the normal crowd, okay? So let me know if you guys have any questions, but otherwise, you guys will need to know all of this in order to help you understand natural selection and how natural selection is the best suited, will survive, and natural selection is also referred to as survival of the fittest, which is the ability to survive and reproduce. So